Hello and welcome back to Restore Planet Podcast with me, your host Jack Cole. So today I'm joined by Wildwood and Kent Wildlife Trust, who can talk to us about their pine marten work going on down in Kent. Your background, and then we'll go from there.
So, I'm Suzanne Kinniston. I'm Conservation Officer at the Wildwood Trust. I'm involved in captive breeding and reintroduction projects for the hazel dormouse and the red-billed chough. I'm also the course coordinator there and run courses on mammal handling and small mammal ID. But yes, I now working on the Southeast Pine Marten Restoration Project. I think I probably developed a passion for pine martens about 30 years ago when I was at university. So it's really exciting for me to be working on this project now.
Well, I am Amy Fitzmaurice. I am the Human Wildlife Coexistence Officer at Kent Wildlife Trust. And I co-manage this project with Suzanne. And I also manage another project here at Kent Wildlife Trust on beaver coexistence. And I work on a variety of different projects across the trust that focus on coexistence. So thinking about social science and how we can work well with different people and engage them with nature. I'm also very excited to be working on a pine marten project.
Hi, so I'm Ella Lewis. I started my journey at Kent Wildlife Trust as a trainee, supported by People's Trust for Endangered Species, where I worked on the habitat suitability modelling for the Southeast Pine Marten Restoration Project. My role now is a data and mapping officer, where I work on various projects to provide assistance in spatial analyses and wider support for data collection. And I have a particular interest in ecological modelling.
Lovely. All right, so welcome. So to start, tell us, what is a pine marten, Suzanne?
So a pine marten, well, apart from being obviously a very enigmatic, charismatic animal, it is scientifically a member of the mustelid family. So that includes badgers, otters, stoats and weasels and the polecat. And they globally are a very successful family of animals and occupy lots of different niches. So for instance, the otter is aquatic specialist and the badger is a burrowing specialist and the pine marten is an arboreal specialist of this family. So it has the adaptations of the long bushy tail to help it balance along the branches. And it's got double jointed ankles, which means it's able to climb down as well as it can climb up. And it's got these semi-retractile claws to help it grip the tree branches. So yeah, really an arboreal specialist of the mustelid family.
Lovely. So what exactly happened to the pine marten population in the UK?
In the UK, so historically, in Mesolithic times, so going back quite a few thousand years, it was actually the most abundant carnivore in the UK because, of course, after the last ice age, Britain was covered by what we call the Wildwood. And so most of Britain was wooded, which absolutely suited the pine marten and, you know, it thrived. And its numbers were estimated at sort of 147,000 across this country, which is, you know, amazing, you know, think of that now. And then across time, so of course, you know, we've lost so much of that habitat. I mean, the woodland at one point was decimated to sort of 5% of what it was. So of course, the pine marten lost a lot of the areas where it lived. And then it was persecuted very, very heavily. So as a predator, it was labelled as vermin. It was put on the Preservation of the Grain Act, which was an act put together by Henry VIII in Tudor times. And basically people were paid to kill animals that were on this list, including the pine marten. And then later on, so a couple of hundred years later, sort of game laws were passed, which meant that it was very easy to shoot on anybody's land. And so the pine marten was shot by gamekeepers who were protecting their animals for their sport. And then also they were persecuted for their fur. So in the 14th century, this started, and the trade in pine marten pelts was flourishing. I think it was known as soft gold, apparently, and was, you know, very good trade item, and of course was used to make robes and stoles and things like that. So for the pine marten in Britain, it's a double whammy of habitat loss and persecution. unfortunately. Yes. So I should say the numbers now, we're looking, I think the lowest numbers went to about 2,000, and then now, since their recovery, they're probably double that.
So why should we bring them back and keep boosting those numbers?
Why should we bring them back? Because they are a really important part of the ecosystem. It's really restoring that balance. You know, they will bring balance back in as a carnivore. You know, they can regulate small mammal populations, but also they can act as a flagship species. I mentioned earlier that pine martens are a very charismatic animal, and they can, you know, people actually engage with this animal in a way they might not engage with the habitat of the animal. So we can use this animal to basically kickstart, you know, a lot of habitat restoration, even for green bridges, you know, across the southeast. You know, we can get a proper green network going.
All right, and in the context of wilding, sort of more broadly, and some of the wider effects that pine martens could have, what sort of things could we see?
So there's quite a nice story with the pine marten and the red squirrel, which I think has reached the press and the media. So a lot of people are aware of this now. We're still not quite sure of the mechanism of how this works, but obviously we have the grey squirrel in the UK, which is a non-native introduction from North America, and it's caused, you know, a lot of problems in terms of tree damage. And also, of course, to red squirrels, because they carry the pox virus, which the red squirrel actually suffers from, but the grey squirrel seems to have more immunity to. So the early research in Ireland showed that where you have the pine martens dispersing across Ireland, then the grey squirrel numbers are going down and the red squirrel numbers are increasing. So there's actually, you know, and the tagline was "the enemy of my enemy is my friend." And so the same research was done in Scotland, and they were finding the same thing there. And there's sort of various ways this could be happening, but we have to kind of take this as a win for the red squirrel, really. If the pine marten, you know, reintroductions can help the red squirrel by affecting the grey squirrel either by direct predation or by creating a landscape of fear for the grey squirrel, then this will be, it's got to be very, very positive. You know, we can then start thinking potentially about red squirrel restoration as well.
Brilliant. Okay, so now on to Amy. Tell us about your Southeast Pine Marten project that you've got.
Yeah, so there is a national strategy for pine martens for Britain, which is very exciting, which was written by Vincent Wildlife Trust. And we really wanted to build on that. So the southeast is a potential area where pine martens could be restored to. And there are other pine marten projects that are starting to happen across Britain, in Wales and England. So we wanted to start thinking about how could we do a really good project that would help pine martens to be restored back to here, because it would take a very long time naturally for them to get to the south. And how could we do that following best practice? And how could we do that in a way that would really make it into a project that has benefits for many different types of biodiversity, but also for local people, thinking more on a landscape scale. So we wanted to start, rather than just think about putting pine martens out in Kent, which is obviously where Kent Wildlife Trust works and where Wildwood works, we wanted to think about it more in a landscape scale. So we wanted to start a project that was restoring pine martens to the southeast. And to do that, we wanted to make sure that we were doing it as a co-developed project, which is best practice for conservation, working with a range of different stakeholders, incorporating all of those expertise and ideas into a strategy that would really create something very positive over a long time period. Obviously, landscape scale conservation takes a long time. So our strategy is currently within a 10-year time frame. So we're still in the early stages of that project. We started it around a year and a half ago, thinking about who are the stakeholders in the southeast, who would be influenced by this project, who might be impacted positively or negatively, thinking about all the different people that would need to be involved to make this brilliant project. So we've just been having lots of different meetings over the year and a half with all these different types of stakeholders, having those conversations about if we were to do pine martens in the southeast, what would that project look like? What would that mean for you? And really building on that. So we've set up a committee, which are core project organizations who do sort of day-to-day management alongside Susan and I. And then we have the stakeholder working group, which is made up of around 30 plus organizations now across the southeast, so that we can all co-develop this strategy together, which is really, really important for legacy and creating that landscape scale conservation.
Fantastic. And so what work is happening on the project sort of at present right now, and how can communities and interested people get involved?
Yeah, so a large part of sort of the restoration project is the feasibility. So in terms of the ecological feasibility assessments that we're doing, we conducted a species distribution model to identify whether the habitat in the southeast is suitable for restoring pine marten. So this species distribution model is a statistical model which essentially predicts where in a given space there is suitable habitat for the species to occupy. So our model does this by characterising the environmental conditions that are deemed suitable for pine marten based on confirmed sightings across the European range. It then predicts where similar habitats are located in a given space, in our case, the southeast. So to conduct our model, we used a subset of 2,314 occurrence records across their European distribution, and then paired this with various environmental variables, including things like forest density, tree species, and land cover type. And these were put into the model to predict suitability. So our habitat suitability map showed large woodland areas as moderate to highly suitable for pine marten, predominantly in areas across the high wealds in Sussex and also Kent Downs. As we expected, large parts of the southeast also indicated low suitability for pine marten, and this is due to centuries of habitat loss and fragmentation, as Susan mentioned earlier. So these were predominantly shown to be areas of expansive urbanisation and agricultural land. We found that the strongest predictors for what determines suitability in the model included temperature, rainfall, elevation, and forest density. And through data analysis, we can identify exactly how each of these environmental variables influence suitability. So, for example, the results indicated that pine martens prefer rainfall above a 600 millimetre monthly average, and they also prefer lower elevations between 0 to 1,000 metres above sea level. So in terms of the next stages into the sort of feasibility process, we will be using the results from the habitat suitability map to undertake connectivity modelling in order to predict key dispersal routes between highly suitable areas. So in other words, where pine martens are expected to move across the landscape. These connectivity models consider potential barriers to their movement, such as the influence of roads, urban areas and water bodies, in order to assess their dispersal ability. Doing this will improve our determination of the most suitable release sites and also inform our long-term strategies for landscape scale restoration. So, for example, looking into the priority areas for expanding and connecting the woodland.
Okay, so what else is happening?
Great, yeah. So as part of the feasibility work that Ella was talking about, we're also doing additional ecological feasibility, looking at potential release sites that came out of the modelling. Because if an area is suitable in terms of its habitat, it's also really important that we understand, is there enough prey? What might be competitors that are there? Is there any predation that might be happening for pine martens? So we want to conduct ecological monitoring of our potential release sites to understand, are they actually suitable? As pine martens have a really mixed diet, it's really important for us to study lots of different types of things. So we have to do like vegetation surveys because they eat berries in winter and autumn. And obviously their main food source is small mammals, which Suzanne said earlier. So we have to make sure that they have enough enough prey for these areas to be suitable release sites. So we're doing ecological feasibility for a whole year, so we can understand in those potential release sites if there's enough suitable prey and forage for them throughout the different seasons, because that's really important, and what other biodiversity might be there, because they have some competitors like badgers and red foxes, just to understand any potential risks. And another really crucial part of the feasibility work that we're doing is social feasibility. Obviously, these areas hopefully will be good habitat. We've established that. Hopefully they'll be good ecologically, but we also need to understand, do the people of where we potentially might put out pine martens, are they keen on having pine martens? Are they not keen? Are they interested in being part of the project? How would they like to be part of the project? Particularly because it's a landscape scale project, there are lots of opportunities for people to get involved in this project. And that is what we want. To build a project that has really strong legacy within a community, we need lots of people to have the opportunity to be involved in the project really early on. So that's really important. So we're starting to do different types of engagement events to allow lots of different people to have the opportunity to be involved, because, it's, as conservationists, obviously we love wildlife and we value wildlife, and lots of other people do as well. And it's really important that they have that opportunity to be able to, partake in things and contribute in whatever way they can. So we want to try and do that within this project across a wide landscape.
And what are some of the ways that people can get involved?
Yeah, so it's really exciting time at the moment because we do have all the ecological work going on. So there's lots of interesting things that people can get involved with. So we recently had some events where we ran some equipment building workshops, so people could help us build equipment that we're going to be using in the ecological feasibility research, which was great. So we built things called track plates, which are bits of wood, which we fold into a triangle. And we have very high-tech equipment inside this bit of wood, which is basically just a little bit of powder at each end and some sticky paper in the middle. And when animals walk across it, they leave their footprints. So it's a non-invasive monitoring tool because the animals can pass through really easy. They're not kept in there, at all, like other small mammal monitoring techniques. And they just leave their footprints behind. And through a collaboration through WildTrack, another NGO, we can analyze those footprints and it can tell us what species we have, which is amazing. So it's really low cost and it's great for people to be involved. So we had lots of different people from the communities coming to help us build this equipment. And people have signed up to be part of a volunteer group. So anyone who's interested in the project can sign up to be part of our volunteer group, and they can volunteer on a number of different things, depending on what they're interested in. So as the feasibility work progresses, there'll be lots of opportunities to be involved. So people might want to help monitor a trap plate if it's close to them. That would be great. Or if they might want to monitor a camera trap so they can keep an eye on it and help us check things. Maybe they might want to get involved in bat surveys, but we also have the social stuff as well. So we'll have lots of events engaging different types of audiences. And if people are really keen on that stuff and they want to engage other people in wildlife in their communities, then obviously we want to work with them as well. So we have a very strong community organizing system. So it's really important that we encourage and empower those people to grow this project all together. Because the biodiversity that we have in the southeast and everywhere is everyone's wildlife. So it's really nice to try and work towards that.
Great. And finally, Suzanne, what's the future for pine martens in Britain?
Well, hopefully very positive. They received full protection in 1988. So it's been a slow but sure recovery since then. So there's been habitat restoration projects. There's also been reintroduction projects in Scotland and in England and in Wales. And it's really for people, hopefully will feel lucky that they have got a pine marten in their neighbourhood. It's such an enigmatic, charismatic species, as I mentioned. very early on, and I just feel we should feel privileged to have this animal back in the UK. Well, yeah, across the UK.
Lovely. Ladies, thank you so much for your time.